My name is Allison. I'm 32 years old, and I never thought I would be in this situation. When my parents called demanding I transfer $27,000 to my sister Sarah, immediately, my heart nearly stopped. That's a lot of money, even for a successful accountant like me. The urgency in their voices made my stomach twist, especially considering my complicated history with Sarah. Something didn't feel right about this sudden emergency. Let me tell you what really happened. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from and hit that like and subscribe button if family drama gets your attention. Growing up in our suburban home in Pennsylvania, it was always clear who the favorite child was. My parents doted on Sarah from the moment she was born when I was 4 years old. She had the prettier bedroom with the bay window, got the newest clothes while I wore hand-me-downs and received lavish birthday parties while mine were simple affairs at home. I don't think my parents even realized their favoritism. To them, Sarah was the delicate flower who needed protection and nurturing, while I was the responsible one who would be fine no matter what. When report cards came home, my straight A's were expected and received with casual nods, while Sarah's C's were celebrated because, at least she passed. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. I remember one Christmas when I was 14 and Sarah was 10. I had been asking for a laptop for school all year, saving half the money myself from babysitting jobs. Sarah mentioned wanting ice skating lessons just a week before Christmas. Guess who got what they wanted? I received a refurbished desktop computer that barely functioned, while my parents spent hundreds on professional ice skating gear and private lessons for Sarah. She quit 3 weeks later when she realized it was hard work. By the time I reached high school, I had accepted my role in the family. I focused on academics knowing it was my ticket to independence. I joined every club that would look good on college applications and maintained perfect grades. When senior year came around, I applied for every scholarship possible. The day my full-ride scholarship letter to NYU arrived was one of the proudest moments of my life. My parents congratulated me, but quickly shifted the conversation to Sarah's difficulty with algebra. That night, I made a private promise to myself that I would build my own life where I was valued. College was transformative. For the first time, my achievements were recognized and celebrated. I double majored in accounting and finance, graduated summa cum laude, and landed an internship at a prestigious accounting firm in Manhattan that eventually turned into a full-time position after graduation. Meanwhile, Sarah bounced between community college programs, never completing any of them. My parents funded each new interest photography equipment culinary school supplies a study abroad program she came home from after 2 weeks. They never pushed her to finish what she started or to support herself. By 32, I had built a comfortable life in New York. I was a senior accountant at my firm, had a beautiful apartment in Brooklyn, and had cultivated a circle of supportive friends. I kept in touch with my family with regular calls and visits during major holidays, though these encounters were often tense. Last Thanksgiving was particularly difficult. Sarah, then 28, and still living in our parents' basement, spent the entire dinner talking about her recent 3-week tour through Europe. When I asked about her job, she laughed and said she was between opportunities. Later, I discovered my parents had funded the entire trip as a mental health break for her. I tried not to judge. I really did. But watching my sister continue to coast through life on my parents' generosity while I had worked for everything I had was difficult to stomach. Still, I maintained the peace, limiting my visits and keeping conversations superficial. That strategy worked until a regular Tuesday evening in April. I had just finished a demanding day at work reviewing tax documents for a major client and was unwinding with a glass of wine and takeout Thai food. My television was playing a reality show I wasn't really watching when my phone rang with my parents' number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Tuesday wasn't our usual call day, and I was exhausted. Something told me to answer, though. That decision would change everything. Allison, thank God you picked up. My mother's voice came through unusually high-pitched and strained. We need your help right away. I sat up straighter, immediately alert. What's wrong? Is everyone okay? It's Sarah. My father's voice joined in, indicating I was on speakerphone. She's in trouble, and we need you to send her money immediately. My grip tightened on the phone. What kind of trouble is she hurt? She's not physically hurt, my mother said quickly. But she needs $27,000 as soon as possible. Today, if you can make it happen. The specific amount caught me off guard. $27,000. That's oddly specific. What's going on? There was a pause followed by muffled whispering I couldn't make out. We can't get into the details right now, my father finally responded. Sarah will explain everything to you later, but this is urgent, Allison. Really urgent. I walked to my laptop and opened my banking app, looking at my savings. I could technically afford it, but it would wipe out most of what I had set aside for a down payment on a condo. I need to know what this is for before I send that kind of money. Allison, my mother's voice grew sharp. This is your sister we're talking about. She's in crisis and needs your help. You're her big sister. This is what family does for each other. The words stung, hitting that familiar chord of family obligation that had been programmed into me since childhood. I understand that, Mom, but $27,000 isn't pocket change. Can't you tell me anything about what's happening? My father sighed heavily. Sarah made some mistakes, but she's trying to fix things. This money will help her get back on track. She specifically asked us not to share details with anyone, including you. She's embarrassed. A memory flashed through my mind. 3 years ago, Sarah had called me directly crying about needing $5,000 to start a small online business. Against my better judgment, I had transferred the money that same day. 2 weeks later, she posted photos of herself at a luxury resort in Bali on Instagram. When I confronted her, she claimed she needed the break to clear her mind before starting her business. The business never materialized, and neither did my $5,000. I want to help, I really do, I said carefully. But I've been in this position before with Sarah. I need more information. We don't have time for this, Allison, my mother snapped. If you can't trust your own sister, that's your problem. She needs this money today. Can I at least talk to Sarah directly? I asked. Another pause. She's not with us right now, my father said. She's dealing with the situation. Just send the money to her usual account. You still have her details, right? Something about this wasn't adding up. The urgency, the secrecy, the specific amount. I'm sorry, but I can't just blindly send that much money without understanding what's going on. Let me talk to Sarah first, and then I can decide. What followed was a barrage of guilt and accusations. My mother cried about how I'd always been jealous of my sister. My father questioned how I could be so cold and calculating when family needed me. They brought up everything they'd ever done for me, though the list was noticeably shorter than what they'd done for Sarah. Fine, my father eventually said, his voice ice cold. If you're going to be selfish about this, we'll figure something out ourselves. But don't expect Sarah to forget this betrayal. The call ended abruptly, leaving me sitting in stunned silence in my living room. My Thai food had gone cold, and my wine sat untouched. Something was very wrong. In all our family drama over the years, my parents had never asked me for money for Sarah. They had always funded her themselves. Why was this time different, and why couldn't anyone tell me what the money was for? I picked up my phone again and dialed Sarah's number. It went straight to voicemail. I sent a text. Mom and Dad just called about money. What's going on? Call me ASAP. No response. Whatever was happening, I wasn't going to send $27,000 into the void without answers. If Sarah was truly in trouble, I wanted to help her the right way, not just throw money at the problem. I decided to do some investigating on my own. After trying Sarah's phone several more times with no success, I turned to social media. Sarah was usually active on Instagram, posting several times a day about her outfits, meals, or whatever new interest had captured her attention that week. Her last post was from 3 days ago, a selfie with the Las Vegas Strip visible in the background. The caption read, "Taking chances and living my best life. Vegas, #lucky streak, new beginnings. Las Vegas." As far as I knew, Sarah was supposed to be at home in Pennsylvania, where she'd been living with our parents since her latest career aspiration, becoming a life coach, had fizzled out after 2 months. The comments section was filled with friends encouraging her winning streak and telling her to bet big. One comment from a user named Jackpot Jenny caught my attention. "Girl, you're on fire tonight. Can't believe that winning streak at the blackjack table." My stomach sank. Was this about gambling? I scrolled through her older posts and noticed a pattern I hadn't picked up on before. Over the past 6 months, there were multiple posts from various casinos, mostly local ones in Pennsylvania and Atlantic City, but increasingly farther afield. I called my friend Jessica, who had been my roommate in college and was now a financial advisor. If anyone could help me think through this situation objectively, it was her. $27,000 with no explanation, Jessica said after I explained the situation. "Absolutely not. That's insane, Allison." "I know," I sighed, pacing around my living room. "But what if she's really in trouble? What if someone's threatening her or something? Then that's a matter for the police, not for wiping out your savings," Jessica replied firmly. "Remember the Bali incident? Or the time before that, when she needed money for car repairs and then posted about buying designer bags the next week?" Jessica had witnessed many of Sarah's financial manipulations over the years and had always encouraged me to establish firmer boundaries. "Her latest posts are from Las Vegas," I told her. "I think this might be about gambling." "That would explain the specific amount," Jessica mused. "Sounds like a gambling debt." "But $27,000? How could she lose that much?" "You'd be surprised how quickly it can add up, especially if she's been at it for a while and trying to win back previous losses." After hanging up with Jessica, I made a decision that felt extreme but necessary. I contacted a private investigator in Las Vegas. It was expensive, but far less than the $27,000 my parents were asking for. I gave him Sarah's information and the name of the hotel from her Instagram posts. He promised to see what he could discover by morning. I barely slept that night, my mind racing with possibilities. Had Sarah gotten mixed up with loan sharks? Was she being threatened? Or was this just another irresponsible financial mess she expected others to clean up? The investigator called early the next morning. "Ms. Morgan, I've located your sister. She's been gambling heavily at the Bellagio and several other casinos on the Strip for the past week. According to my sources, she lost a significant amount at the high-stakes blackjack tables and borrowed from the casino's credit line. That debt is now due." $27,000, I asked. "Exactly that amount," he confirmed. "In these establishments, when you can't pay your marker, that's what they call the casino credit, it becomes a serious issue. It's essentially the same as writing a bad check in Nevada. Technically, they could press criminal charges." My blood ran cold. This was worse than I'd imagined. "Is she in danger?" "Not physical danger," he clarified. "But legal trouble, certainly. The casino has given her until tomorrow to pay up before they take further action." I thanked him and ended the call, my hands shaking. Now I understood the urgency in my parents' voices, but I still couldn't understand why they hadn't just told me the truth. And more importantly, why were they enabling this behavior instead of addressing the real problem? I felt a complex mix of emotions, anger at Sarah for her irresponsibility, frustration with my parents for their secrecy, and enabling and genuine concern for my sister's well-being. Simply sending money wouldn't solve the underlying issue. If Sarah had a gambling addiction, she needed real help, not a bailout that would allow her to continue destructive patterns. I made another call to my parents, but it went straight to voicemail. Were they avoiding me now? I sent a text. "I know about Las Vegas and the gambling. We need to talk about getting Sarah real help, not just money." no response. It was clear what I needed to do. If no one in my family was willing to address the real issue, I would have to do it myself. I opened my laptop and booked a flight to Las Vegas for that afternoon. Arranging an emergency trip to Las Vegas was a logistical challenge. I had 3 client meetings scheduled for the day that I needed to reschedule. My boss, Eleanor, was not pleased when I requested the sudden time off. "Allison, the Westfield audit is due next week. This is hardly the time for a vacation," she said, her voice crisp with disapproval. "It's a family emergency," I explained, careful not to share too many details. "I'll take my laptop and work remotely as much as possible. The Westfield files are already organized, and I can finalize them from Vegas if needed." After some negotiation, Eleanor reluctantly approved 3 days of remote work. "Don't make a habit of this, Allison. Your reliability has always been your strongest asset." Those words stung. I'd spent years building my reputation at the firm, and now Sarah's problems were threatening that too. I pushed the thought aside and focused on practical matters. My flight was scheduled for 2:10 p.m., giving me just enough time to pack a small suitcase and get to JFK Airport. The entire taxi ride I alternated between checking my phone for responses from my family and reviewing what little I knew about gambling addiction from a hasty internet search. The flight to Las Vegas was 5.5 hours of turbulence both in the air and in my mind. I sat wedged between a honeymooning couple and a businessman who snored loudly trying to make sense of how we'd reached this point. Had there been signs of Sarah's gambling problem that I'd missed? Was this a recent development or a long-standing issue that had finally spiraled out of control? And why had my parents hidden this from me, choosing instead to just ask for money without explanation? I thought back to family gatherings over the past year. Sarah had mentioned visiting Atlantic City a few times with friends, but that hadn't seemed unusual. Many people visited casinos occasionally without developing problems. When had occasional visits turned into an addiction severe enough to rack up $27,000 in debt? The plane landed at Las Vegas McCarran International Airport just after 5:00 p.m. local time. The desert heat hit me like a wall as I exited the climate-controlled terminal and hailed a taxi. The driver asked if I was in town for business or pleasure. "Neither," I replied, watching the famous strip appear on the horizon, neon lights already visible even though the sun hadn't fully set. I had booked a room at the Bellagio, the same hotel where Sarah was staying, according to her social media posts. The grandeur of the hotel's famous fountain and opulent lobby would normally have impressed me, but I barely noticed my surroundings as I checked in and headed to my room. After freshening up, I decided to begin my search. The Bellagio casino floor was massive, crowded, and overwhelming to my senses. Bells and electronic sounds from slot machines created a constant background noise. The air was heavy with perfume, cigarette smoke, and the faint scent of alcohol. People crowded around various tables, their faces displaying the full spectrum of human emotion: elation, despair, determination, resignation. I walked slowly through the gaming floor, scanning for Sarah's familiar face. I checked the blackjack tables first, remembering the Instagram comment about her streak there. After nearly an hour of searching without success, I expanded my search to other games and eventually other parts of the hotel. Just as I was considering giving up for the night, I spotted her at a roulette table near the back of the casino. She looked different than when I'd last seen her at Thanksgiving. She'd lost weight and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She was wearing a black cocktail dress that looked expensive, her hair styled in an elegant updo. If it weren't for the tense set of her shoulders and the slightly frantic look in her eyes, she might have appeared to be just another wealthy tourist enjoying a night of entertainment. I stayed back, not immediately approaching. I wanted to observe her behavior first. Sarah placed chips on several numbers, substantial bets from what I could see. When the wheel spun and the ball landed on a number she hadn't chosen, her face crumpled momentarily before she composed herself and immediately placed more chips for the next spin. This pattern repeated several times as I watched. She never walked away after a loss, instead increasing her bets, as if convinced the next spin would turn her luck around. When she did occasionally win, she didn't collect her chips, but instead let them ride on new bets, which she invariably lost in subsequent rounds. As I watched my sister's self-destructive behavior, I noticed a man in a tailored suit observing her from nearby. He wasn't playing any games, just watching Sarah with an expression of calculated interest. When Sarah stepped away from the table briefly to speak to a cocktail waitress, he made a subtle gesture to another man in a similar suit, who nodded and continued monitoring her. Casino security, or something else. The investigator had mentioned the debt was to the casino itself, so perhaps these men were keeping tabs on someone they knew owed them money. Sarah returned to the table with a fresh drink and resumed playing. I decided it was time to make my presence known. Whatever was happening here needed to be addressed, and watching from the shadows wouldn't solve anything. Taking a deep breath, I walked directly toward the roulette table where my sister was placing yet another bet. "Sarah!" At the sound of my voice, my sister froze, her hand still outstretched with chips hovering above the roulette table. She turned slowly, her eyes widening with shock as she registered my presence. "Allison, what the hell are you doing here?" Her voice was a harsh whisper, eyes darting around as if afraid someone would overhear. "We need to talk," I said firmly, keeping my voice low but authoritative. "Now." "I'm in the middle of something," she protested, glancing back at the table where the wheel was already spinning. "Something that's about to cost you another few $100s, or should I say, cost me?" I raised an eyebrow. The ball landed with a soft click. Sarah had lost again. She stared at the table for a moment, then at her nearly depleted stack of chips before finally turning back to me. "Fine," she hissed, gathering her remaining chips. "But not here." We walked in tense silence through the casino floor. I noticed the men in suits were still watching from a distance. Sarah led me to a small coffee shop in the hotel atrium away from the gaming floor. Once seated in a corner booth, she immediately went on the offensive. "Are you spying on me? How did you even know I was here?" "Instagram, Sarah. You've been posting your entire Vegas trip," I replied calmly. "And then Mom and Dad called me yesterday, demanding I send you $27,000 immediately with no explanation." Her face paled. "They told you about the money?" "They told me you needed it. They didn't say why. I had to hire a private investigator to find out what was really going on." "You what?" She slammed her hand on the table, drawing glances from nearby patrons. "That's a complete invasion of privacy. You had no right." "No right." I leaned forward. "You're asking me for nearly $30,000. I have every right to know why." Sarah deflated slightly, her anger giving way to something that looked like shame. She stared into her untouched coffee for a long moment before speaking again. "It started about 2 years ago," she finally said, her voice smaller than before. "Just small bets at first at that casino that opened near home. It was fun, you know. Sometimes I'd win, and it felt amazing." I remained silent, letting her continue. "But then I started losing more than winning. I thought if I just played a little longer, my luck would turn around. I started going to Atlantic City on weekends, then taking trips here." She gestured vaguely at our surroundings. "The casino's comp rooms if you play enough. Makes you feel important." "And the 27,000, I prompted when she paused. Sarah's eyes welled with tears. "I took out a marker that's like a loan from the casino. I was sure I could win it back. I was up at one point, Allison. Up 15,000. But then..." She trailed off, the conclusion obvious. "You lost it all, plus more," I finished for her. She nodded miserably. "They gave me until tomorrow to pay it back. If I don't, they'll send it to collections and potentially press charges for fraud. In Nevada, unpaid casino markers are treated like bad checks. It's a criminal offense. Why didn't you or Mom and Dad just tell me this directly? Why the secrecy? At this, Sarah looked genuinely confused. I never told them to call you for money. I didn't want anyone to know, especially you. You've always been so perfect with your finances and your life. Now it was my turn to be confused. But they called me asking me to send you the money. Sarah shook her head. I told them I was in trouble and needed help, yes. But I never specified the amount or suggested they ask you. I assumed they would help me themselves, like they always do. The pieces began falling into place. How many times have they bailed you out before this, Sarah? She looked down at her hands. A few times. Smaller amounts at first. 5,000 here, 8,000 there. They paid off my credit cards twice when I maxed them out at casinos. This is the first time the amount has been this high. I took a deep breath, processing this information. So, they've been enabling your gambling addiction for years, and now that the amount is too big for them to handle, they're trying to pass that responsibility to me without even being honest about what's happening. Sarah flinched at the term addiction, but didn't deny it. I don't think they wanted to tell you because they're embarrassed. They know you would disapprove of them helping me this way. They're right about that, I said, feeling a surge of anger not at Sarah now, but at our parents. Giving you money to pay gambling debts without addressing the real problem isn't helping you, Sarah. It's hurting you. She started crying, then quiet tears streaming down her face. I know I have a problem, okay? I've known for a while. But it's so hard to stop. And it's easier to just ask for help paying the debts than to admit I can't control it. Have you tried to get help Therapy Gamblers Anonymous? She shook her head. Mom and Dad don't believe in therapy. They say it's for people who don't have family to support them. And I was too ashamed to go on my own. I reached across the table and took her hand. Despite years of resentment and complicated feelings, this was still my little sister. She was struggling with a real addiction, and our parents had failed to get her the help she needed. I'm not going to just give you $27,000, Sarah, I said gently. Her face fell, but I continued before she could protest. But I am going to help you. The real way. Not by enabling you, but by helping you address the actual problem. For the first time that evening, Sarah looked at me with something resembling hope in her eyes. What does that mean? It means we're going to make a plan, together, starting right now. As I said those words, I realized that this moment might be the turning point not just for Sarah, but for our entire family dynamic. For once, I wasn't going to play by the established rules. I was going to do what was truly right, not what was expected. After our conversation at the coffee shop, I asked Sarah to take me to her hotel room. I wanted to see what we were dealing with in terms of her current situation. Her suite was littered with shopping bags from high-end boutiques, evidence of another unhealthy coping mechanism. First things first, I said, taking out my notebook and pen. We need to get a complete picture of your financial situation. This $27,000 to the casino, is that your only debt? Sarah's uncomfortable shifting told me everything before she even spoke. Not exactly. Over the next hour, we cataloged her complete financial disaster, $27,000, to the Bellagio, $12,000, across 3 maxed-out credit cards, $8,000 in personal loans from friends, and another $15,000 borrowed from our parents that they didn't expect her to repay, but that I insisted on adding to the list. So, you're over $60,000 in debt, I summarized, feeling slightly nauseated at the total. And your income is... I work part-time at Mom's friend's boutique, Sarah admitted. About 15 hours a week at $14 an hour. The math was depressing. At her current income, she would never be able to pay off these debts, especially with interest accumulating. Okay, here's what we're going to do, I said, formulating a plan. The immediate priority is the casino debt, since that has legal implications. I'm going to contact them and see if we can negotiate terms. They don't negotiate, Sarah said hopelessly. They were very clear about that. Everyone negotiates, I replied with confidence I didn't entirely feel. I do this for a living, Sarah. I might not be negotiating with casinos specifically, but I understand financial agreements. I asked Sarah for the contact information of the credit manager she'd been dealing with. His name was Tony Vescovi, and he worked in the casino's credit department. Stay here, I instructed Sarah. Don't go back to the casino floor. Order room service if you need to, but do not leave this room until I come back. Understand? She nodded, looking both relieved and terrified to have someone else taking control of the situation. I went back to my own room to freshen up and prepare for the meeting. I changed into my most professional outfit, a tailored charcoal suit I had fortunately packed for potential client meetings during my stay. I pulled my hair back into a sleek bun and applied minimal professional makeup. I needed to look like someone who understood business and commanded respect. At the credit office, I asked to speak with Tony Vescovi. After a brief wait, I was shown into a small, surprisingly ordinary office. Tony was a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and an expensive watch. He looked up from his computer as I entered. Mr. Vescovi, my name is Allison Morgan. I'm here regarding my sister Sarah Morgan's marker. Recognition flashed in his eyes. Ah, Ms. Morgan, your sister's payment is due tomorrow. Does this mean you're here to settle the account? I'm here to discuss terms, I replied, sitting down without waiting for an invitation. $27,000 is a significant amount, and while we recognize the debt is valid, paying it in full immediately presents challenges. Tony leaned back in his chair, studying me. Ms. Morgan, casino markers are not like other debts. They're essentially cash advances. When your sister signed for the marker, she agreed to repay it in full upon request. We've already extended the customary grace period. I nodded, acknowledging his point. I understand the nature of the agreement. I'm a CPA with Morrison & Bradley in New York. I work with financial contracts daily. What I'm proposing isn't dismissal of the debt, but a structured repayment that benefits both parties. I opened my portfolio and placed a printed proposal on his desk, something I had quickly prepared before the meeting. My sister has a gambling addiction, I continued frankly. Something I'm sure you recognized long before her family did. Continuing to extend credit to someone with this condition raises questions about the casino's lending practices that I'm sure your compliance department would prefer not to address. It was a subtle hint at potential legal issues, not quite a threat, but an acknowledgement that casinos had responsibilities too. Tony's expression remained neutral, but I noticed his fingers tense slightly on his desk. What are you proposing? He asked. $10,000 today as a good faith payment. The remaining $17,000 paid in monthly installments over 6 months with a written agreement. In exchange, you waive any additional fees or interest. And what guarantee do we have that these payments will be made? I'll be personally guaranteeing them, I stated. You'll have my banking information and authorization for automatic withdrawals on specified dates. Additionally, and this is key, my sister will enroll in a gambling addiction program, and you'll flag her account to prevent any future credit extensions. Tony considered the proposal. The Bellagio prefers full payment. I'm sure they do, I replied. But they also prefer avoiding negative publicity and regulatory scrutiny. A reasonable payment plan shows good faith on both sides. After further negotiation, Tony agreed to present my proposal to his supervisor. He left the office briefly and returned 15 minutes later. We can accept these terms with 2 modifications, he said. $10,000 now with the balance paid over 4 months instead of 6, and we require post-dated checks for the remaining payments as additional security. It wasn't perfect, but it was workable. Agreed, I said, contingent on my sister being added to your self-exclusion list for at least 1 year. We shook hands and I signed the necessary paperwork. As I left the credit office with copies of our agreement, I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. I had committed to a significant financial responsibility, but more importantly, I had taken the first step toward actually helping Sarah, rather than just bailing her out. Back in Sarah's room, I explained the arrangement. I've bought us some time, but now the real work begins. I'm not just going to pay this for you and walk away. Here are my conditions. I presented Sarah with my own set of terms. She would move out of our parents' house and into a shared apartment I would help her find. She would get a full-time job within 2 weeks. She would attend Gamblers Anonymous meetings 3 times weekly. She would see a therapist specializing in addiction. And she would give me complete transparency about her finances until the debt was paid. This is a lot, Sarah said, looking overwhelmed. So is $60,000 in debt, I countered. But you're not going to face it alone. Sarah thought for several minutes, then nodded slowly. Okay, I'll do it. All of it. Next came the hardest part, confronting our parents. I put the call on speakerphone in Sarah's room. Allison. My mother's voice was sharp with disapproval. Have you reconsidered your selfishness? Your sister needs that money immediately. I'm with Sarah right now in Las Vegas, I replied calmly. We've made arrangements with the casino for her debt. There was stunned silence on the other end. You went to Vegas? My father finally asked. Why would you do that instead of just sending the money like we asked? Because sending money isn't what Sarah needs. She needs actual help for her gambling addiction, not enablers who keep bailing her out without addressing the real problem. My mother gasped. How dare you call us enablers? We've been supporting your sister through a difficult time. You've been supporting her addiction, I corrected. How many times have you paid her gambling debts before this? How many times have you given her money that disappeared without explanation? Their silence confirmed what Sarah had already told me. From now on, things are going to be different, I continued. I've made arrangements for the casino debt, but with conditions. Sarah has agreed to get real help, and I need you both to support that instead of undermining it. The conversation that followed was difficult and emotional. My parents initially resisted defending their approach as unconditional love, but when Sarah herself spoke up, admitting how their financial rescues had enabled her to avoid confronting her addiction, they finally began to listen. By the end of the call, we had a tentative agreement. My parents would not give Sarah money directly, but would help with her treatment costs. They agreed to attend a family support group for relatives of gambling addicts. After hanging up, I transferred the initial $10,000 to the casino, feeling a strange mix of emotions. This was not how I had planned to use my savings, but for once I felt like I was truly helping my sister instead of just managing family obligations. Thank you, Sarah said quietly as we sat together in her hotel room. Not just for the money, but for coming here. For seeing what was really happening. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. Beyond the resentment and competition that had characterized our relationship, I saw someone who was struggling and scared. We're going to get through this, I told her, but it won't be easy, and it won't be quick. Real change never is. That night, as I lay in my own hotel room, staring at the ceiling, I realized that by refusing to simply send the money as my parents had asked, I had taken the first step toward breaking destructive patterns that had defined our family for decades. It wasn't just about Sarah's gambling addiction anymore. It was about all of us learning healthier ways to relate to each other. The path forward wouldn't be smooth, but for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about my family's future. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do isn't what's asked of you, but what's truly needed. 6 months have passed since that fateful night in Las Vegas. Today I'm sitting in a small cafe in Philadelphia, waiting for Sarah to arrive. We've established a tradition of monthly coffee meetings to check in on her progress, separate from any family gatherings. The Sarah who walks through the door barely resembles the desperate woman I found at the Bellagio roulette table. Her face has filled out healthily, the dark circles gone from beneath her eyes. She's dressed simply but neatly in jeans and a sweater, a far cry from the flashy outfits she used to wear to create an impression of success. "Hey, big sister," she says, sliding into the chair across from me with a genuine smile. "Sorry I'm a few minutes late. The meeting ran over." "Gamblers Anonymous?" I ask, though I already know her schedule by heart. She nods. "Yeah, I shared my 6-month chip today. It was emotional." 6 months clean from gambling. It's a milestone worth celebrating, though we both know the journey is far from over. Addiction recovery isn't linear, and Sarah has had difficult moments, including one close call, where she drove to a casino parking lot before calling her sponsor and turning around. "I'm proud of you," I tell her, meaning it completely. Sarah's transformation has been remarkable, not just in her freedom from gambling, but in every aspect of her life. As promised, she moved out of our parents' house and into a shared apartment with another woman in recovery. She found a full-time job as an administrative assistant at a local marketing firm, nothing glamorous, but stable work with benefits. Most importantly, she's been faithfully attending therapy and GA meetings, confronting the underlying issues that led to her addiction: her need for excitement and validation, her difficulty coping with negative emotions, her habit of seeking quick escapes rather than dealing with problems. "I made the final payment to you yesterday," she says, pulling out her phone and showing me the transfer confirmation. "Right on schedule." This is another change: Sarah's new commitment to financial responsibility. We had set up a payment plan for her to gradually reimburse me for the casino debt. She hasn't missed a single payment, even when it meant cutting back on expenses she once considered essential. "I know." I smile. I got the notification. "It feels good," she says thoughtfully. "I mean, being debt-free would feel better, but at least now I only owe money to credit cards, not to my sister." She's making progress with those debts too, though it will take years to fully recover financially from her gambling losses. The important thing is that she now has a budget and a plan rather than ignoring the problem. "How was your visit with Mom and Dad last weekend?" I ask, changing the subject. Sarah's expression softens. "It was different. Good different. Dad asked me about my GA meeting, actually asked specific questions, and Mom didn't try to give me money once. Our parents' journey has been nearly as significant as Sarah's. The family counseling sessions were rough at first, lots of defensiveness and old patterns emerging. But gradually, they've come to understand how their well-intentioned help had actually harmed Sarah by preventing her from facing consequences and learning to manage her own life. Mom apologized to me yesterday. I tell Sarah, still feeling surprised by this development. She called out of the blue and said she's been thinking about how they treated us differently growing up, how they put all the responsibility on me and none on you. She actually cried. Sarah reaches across the table and squeezes my hand. "They've apologized to me too, for different reasons. For not seeing what I really needed. For making it easy for me to avoid growing up." She pauses. "I've also been thinking a lot about how I treated you over the years." "You don't need to," I begin, but she cuts me off. "I do, actually. I was jealous of you for so long, Allison. You seemed to have everything together, and I resented you for it instead of recognizing how hard you worked. I took advantage of your responsibility, expecting you to always be there to clean up my messes. I'm sorry." The apology means more than I expected it would. For years, I'd told myself I didn't need recognition for being the responsible one, that I was content with the internal satisfaction of handling my own life well. But hearing Sarah acknowledge my efforts heals something deep inside me. "Thank you," I say simply. That means a lot. We talk for another hour, covering everything from Sarah's new interest in photography, a hobby that doesn't involve money or gambling, to my recent promotion at work. There's an ease between us that has never existed before. No competition, no resentment, just two sisters who genuinely want the best for each other. As we prepare to leave, Sarah asks a question that catches me off guard. "Do you regret it? Coming to Vegas instead of just sending the money?" It would have been easier. I consider this carefully. The past 6 months have been challenging in many ways. Beyond the financial strain, there have been difficult conversations, emotional family therapy sessions, and countless hours spent helping Sarah navigate her new independence. Not for a second, I finally answer. The easy thing would have been to send the money or to refuse and walk away completely. Either way, nothing would have changed. You'd still be gambling, our parents would still be enabling you, and I'd still be resenting both situations from the sidelines. Sarah nods thoughtfully. I think about that a lot, you know. How differently things could have gone if you'd just sent the money like Mom and Dad asked. I probably would have paid off the casino, felt relieved for a minute, and then gone right back to gambling. Maybe not that same day, but eventually. Nothing would have changed. Sometimes the hardest choices are the most important ones, I tell her. I'm just glad we're all finally heading in the right direction. As we hug goodbye on the sidewalk outside the cafe, I feel a sense of peace I've never experienced with my family before. The old wounds haven't completely healed, and our new patterns of interaction are still fragile, requiring conscious effort from all of us to maintain. But for the first time, I feel like we're actually functioning as a family, supporting each other in healthy ways rather than destructive ones. My phone rings as I'm walking back to my car. It's my mother calling to finalize plans for Thanksgiving next week. Unlike last year's tense gathering, I'm actually looking forward to this one. We've agreed to a smaller, simpler celebration focused on gratitude rather than appearance. Hi, Mom, I answer smiling. I just had coffee with Sarah. How is she doing? My mother asks, genuine concern in her voice rather than the anxious enabling of the past. She's doing well. Really well. We all are. As I drive home, I reflect on the strange journey that began with that urgent phone call demanding I send $27,000 to my sister. If I had simply complied with my parents' request, transferred the money without question, as I'd been conditioned to do, nothing would have changed. The cycle would have continued until the next crisis and the next after that. By refusing to take the easy path, by choosing the harder road of addressing the real issues, rather than just the symptoms, I helped change the course, not just for Sarah, but for our entire family. I've learned that true love sometimes means having the courage to say no when everyone is pressuring you to say yes. It means seeing beyond the immediate crisis to the deeper patterns at work. It means setting healthy boundaries even when doing so makes you temporarily the villain in someone else's story. The healing process is ongoing, and there will be challenges ahead. Recovery from addiction is a lifelong journey with potential setbacks. Old family patterns can reassert themselves in times of stress. But now we have new tools, new awareness, and new commitment to handling things differently. When my parents called demanding I send $27,000 to my sister, I could never have imagined that refusing would lead to so much positive change. Sometimes, the most loving thing we can do for someone is not what they're asking for, but what they truly need. I wonder if you were in my position, what would you have done? Would you have sent the money, no questions asked, or would you have taken the harder path? Sometimes the most difficult decisions lead to the most meaningful growth. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about setting boundaries and finding the courage to do what's right, even when it's hard. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it helps you navigate your own family challenges with wisdom and compassion.